we need to be generating our own revenue and be self-sufficient.
What do you see happening in the next 10 years with AI?
So we imagine AI that is in service of individuals. Imagine a personal AI that is empowering you as an individual, that is loyal to you, not eavesdropping or spying on you for another corporation, that respects your data.
Welcome to Future Driven. I'm Adam Lejeunekopp, and on this podcast, we talk about challenges and wins in business. See the vision, drive the future.
Okay, welcome to episode 53 of the Future Driven podcast. I am here with Reza Rassool, Kwaai. Reza, thanks so much for coming on the show. And did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes, you did. Adam, thanks so much for inviting. And just the sort of before we started, you and I were discussing the oddness of our surnames. And
That's
I think you're the first Lejeunekopp that I've met. And maybe I'm the only Rassool you've met. I don't know.
Yep,
I think
we definitely checked that one off the box. Yeah, so thanks so much for coming on. I'm really interested to hear about your company and what you're doing with AI and everything. But first, give us a little bit of your background, of your career. I'm guessing you got a pretty rich history. Tell us a little bit about your background and your career.
Sure. Thanks so much. Yeah, look, I'm retired. So your audience is probably not expecting someone that's retired to be interviewed. But let me reflect on my career and tell you what I'm doing now. So I was CTO of Real Networks, and you know from Seattle, Real Networks is one of those brands that an iconic brand. I think we still have a nostalgia for that brand. It's arguably the company that invented streaming media. This thing we're doing now.
Right.
The protocol for streaming media was invented by Real Networks. TSP, as it was called then, was donated. So it was an act of philanthropy to the industry. And RTSP is still used inside many devices. Most video cameras support RTSP. It's not the protocol that is currently used for streaming media like Netflix and the sort of streaming media that we are now used to. And it's interesting, there's an interesting story of how that evolved that we could come to later on. But so that was my sort of end of my career. I retired from Real Networks end of summer last year. And I thought, well, what am I going to do now? So I decided to launch a nonprofit AI lab because I had a feeling of angst that AI is heading off in a dangerous direction. And I'd love to tell you more about that. But my origin story, I was born in Cape Town in South Africa. You can tell from my accent that I'm not from the Americas, although I grew up in London. I had my education in London, started to get involved in technology in the UK. And then one of the projects that I was working on, it gained traction in Hollywood, and that's where I live now. It was one of the first systems that allowed you to edit a movie on a computer. So the strength of that success, the project was called Lightworks, the company, and it had a good exit. And on the strength of that, I moved my family over to the US, and I've been in Los Angeles for the last 30 years. So look, there's a string of startup successes, 2 exits to Google, lots of innovation, lots of fundraising, but I'm now running a nonprofit, a volunteer organization, which is very different to what I was doing before. So that's the sort of beginning to where I am now. And gosh, there's a lot of lessons learned along the way.
Yeah, I bet. There's nothing can compare to experience and going through it. And it's funny how you reflected back on how many years in your career?
Oh my God, it's 30 or 40 years. Yeah.
30 or 40 years in just 3 or 4 minutes. I know it wasn't that simple, but look, it sounds like you're on to something bigger and better and more rewarding. So let's dive into Kwaai a little bit. Obviously, more than anybody what's happening with AI and we're in uncharted territories. So what are we looking at today? What are we looking in the future? Tell us a little bit about your nonprofit.
Right. So I left Real Networks with this angst that AI is heading in a dangerous direction. So what do we mean by that? AI is currently controlled by half a dozen corporations. No more than that. They own the majority of that business space. And everyone else is basically their customer. That's a dangerous situation to be in when you've got that concentration of wealth and control. It's monopolization. And it's dangerous not only for the industry, the AI industry, it's actually dangerous for the economy. I think the last time the US was in a similar state was maybe a century ago in the late 20s when the industry was controlled by maybe a half a dozen corporations. So, and gosh, you don't have to be a historian to know what happened next.
Right.
So, in fact, just to bring this into lay person's understanding, the board game Monopoly illustrates that as the game progresses, one person ends up owning all the wealth. And what happens then? It's game over.
Right.
So there is no mechanism within capitalism itself to prevent that game over scenario. So what do we do in the board game Monopoly when we're having a great game? It's maybe Thanksgiving or Christmas or some other family gathering. We're playing the board game and we sense that end game is approaching. What do? We actually say, Adam, here, take some money. I want you to play longer. Or why don't you look after these properties for me? We adopt altruistic interventions to make the game go on longer. So Kwaai is an altruistic intervention to make the game go longer because we anticipate that we're hurtling towards game over pretty quickly. So, but we're not a sort of clickbaity doom type of organization that's saying that the robots are going to take over the world. That, I think, is a distraction from the clear and present danger now of AI simply being another tool in the belt of big business to extract more wealth out of individuals. So what can we do instead? We think AI is extremely powerful. It's probably the biggest leap that humanity's made, maybe since the invention of writing itself. So how can we harness that great advantage, that great leap forward? How can we harness it to uplift all of humanity? So we imagine AI that is in service of individuals. Imagine a personal AI that is empowering you as an individual, that is loyal to you, not eavesdropping or spying on you for another corporation, that respects your data and you own and control it. It would be truly uplifting because it'll make your day-to-day life better. It'll save you time and the hassle in engaging with businesses and so on. So we imagine AI in a very different way. And we can do that because we're coming at it from the point of view of a nonprofit, of a volunteer workforce, and developing an open source platform. So I can go more into that, but there is actually precedent for this type of altruistic intervention that has actually worked. And that precedent is called Linux. So Linux was also a response to the monopolization of the industry, specifically the server operating system industry. There were only a half a dozen choices 30 years ago, and the industry was kind of roadblocked because no one could develop kernel level software unless you had $1 million source code license from one of the available operating systems, or you got a job at Microsoft so you could work on Windows NT or whatever. And then along comes Linux, volunteer, open source, non-profit. And now Linux is the dominant operating system, and it supports a multi-trillion-dollar economy. So we fancy ourselves as the Linux of AI, maybe the Linux of personal AI. It's somewhat aspirational. But we think that if we were to develop a layer of software that is open source upon which people can build their own AI, then the industry will be healthier for it. So that's the motivation, and that's the story about Kwaai.
Yeah, that's great. So give us a little bit more then on how does it work? So do you currently have an open source platform, or is that something you're in developing? Where are you at in the stage?
Yeah, so you can go to the website Kwaai.ai and you can play with an open source platform. You can play with an example of here's a chat bot that you can talk to, that can talk back to you and is armed by a body of knowledge that you've curated. Okay. So we show a number of examples of this. The open source platform is close to being released in beta form so that you can create your own bot. You can create your own agent that is informed by your own personal knowledge. We will be releasing it into a beta test program. It's a closed beta. It's going to be running in universities and colleges, and 30 universities and colleges have signed up. So as soon as this becomes available, which is any day now, we will be releasing it to those colleges. And it allows professors to create a chatbot that they control. So they upload their course curriculum material to it. And the use case is that students can query that chatbot and ask questions about the course curriculum material. So that's one example where AI is being used by an individual, here a professor or any instructor, and it makes their life easier. It's offloading that sort of customer support role that they've been burdened with more and more as students email them at 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night asking for clarification on an essay that's due at midnight. So that seems to be a recurring thing. And we're using that as a test case because we feel that that type of use case is we once we've got it solved for the professor, we can go and solve that for anybody else that has got a body of knowledge that they want to be able to query either themselves or they want to allow other people to query. So that's an example of something we're working on.
And just so everybody that's watching this, listening to this knows that this is different than utilizing an open source platform like ChatGPT or Google
Yeah,
Gemini, because you can take your open source platform and build your own on top of it.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And the thing about asking ChatGPT questions is ChatGPT is armed with general knowledge. This is knowledge that is vacuumed up from the internet. You know, those sort of fonts of truth and wisdom like Reddit and Twitter and TikTok. But if you're asking questions that really need to be sourced from your own personal data, for instance, you want to manage your own finances or you want to deal with inbound communication, ChatGPT knows nothing about that. So they say, well, okay, well, you can upload all of that material to us. I don't know that I want to do that. I don't know. First of all, it's not practical to send you gigabytes of material. And I don't frankly trust my personal data in your hands when the terms and conditions say, hey, we're free to train our models on your data. So it's a matter of trust, and it's actually a matter of the reputation that these companies have built up already. You know, you find that there's a tacit assumption that they own all the data that they can see. And very few people can resist that tacit assumption to say, hey, no, you don't own my data. You have to be rich and powerful to be able to resist it. Like Scarlett Johansson said to OpenAI, no, that's my voice. You can't monetize my voice without asking me. But the tacit assumption that these companies, maybe these half a dozen corporations, are making is that anything they can see on the internet is fair game and they can own, and they own it in perpetuity without any residual rights to you, without any compensation, but they can choose, they can monetize that data, any data they can see. And this is a tacit assumption that very few people are resisting because it is difficult to resist it. They are rich and powerful. They've got powerful attorneys. but this is going on. So anyway, look, that's a topic. The whole topic of open source and the topic of privacy and data rights is a big area that we are looking at as well.
So you're rolling out your platform in beta through education platforms. At what point do you hope to make that become public once
Yeah.
you've proven out the concept?
It's a good question. So I think it's going to be in beta for about a quarter, and then we'll make it generally available. So let's say if we release it before the year is up, maybe it would be in beta the whole of Q1 before general availability. Ultimately, we want the AI to be running locally on your own hardware. That's the safest place for it. That means your data stays local and private, and you become the custodian of your own data, rather than sending it up to someone's platform where there'll be a million customers' data as a sort of a honeypot for hackers to go and hack. They one hack and they've got access to all the data. No, let everyone look after their own data. Just fine. That means hackers would have to go and hack them one at a time rather than having this honeypot. But it's not really today. It's not possible to run the AI at home for everybody. You need a reasonably powerful machine. We are eroding that or lowering that barrier to entry so it becomes more accessible to more people to run the AI locally. For those people that don't have the wherewithal to run their AI locally, we'll create a multi-tenant platform. We have created a multi-tenant platform, and we can host their AI for them, and we'll pass on that cost. So that would be the way that the charity, the nonprofit, earns some revenue. But it's not the same as getting a subscription to a ChatGPT or one of the other AIs.
So we are a Google customer, Matic, because of the small business bundle
Right.
offering that they offer. So, and they currently have not upgraded to their AI Gemini. We can, I can utilize the Gemini through the browser, but they have a whole integrated solution into the Google Workspace. But today it doesn't really serve us well because it's too general, in my opinion. It's just grabbing, like you're saying, just stuff from the internet, but it's not customized to my customers, to the data that we have. If it was able to source those answers from all of the content that I have on my cloud Google Workspace, that might make sense, but it's not there quite yet. But what you're saying is that if I had all of that content available in one place that was customized to me, I could have it's AI as a tool, right? And in order to allow myself and my team members to do a better job, be more efficient, be more customized into what we're doing.
Sure.
All
You'll
of
be
this
able to have a
seems
conversation with your own data.
right.
That on its own is super. That is empowering. It's empowering to a point, and then afterwards you're going to think, well, okay, now I want it to do something more, and that's where the whole agentic behavior of AI comes in. You want it to do jobs for you. Talking to your data is one thing, and we've been playing with this now for over a year, and you get to a point where, okay, I've talked enough. What have you done for me lately, AI? And you then want to be able to send the AI off to do jobs like, oh, can you go and cancel that subscription for me? Oh, can you go and dispute that extra charge that's on my credit card? AI should be able to go off and do that. Can you go and research vacation options for me for this time? It should be able to go off and do all of that, knowing your calendar, knowing your preferences, knowing who you are, and being able to do it anonymously, protecting your privacy so that you're not inundated with the sort of avalanche of spam that's going to come. I don't know if you've ever tried searching for a car. You've let the auto dealers know that you're in the market for a car. Oh
Right.
my word.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's an avalanche of spam that comes your way. And the big problem is that we are humans and they are machines. That means vendors, businesses are machines.
Right.
We need a machine acting on our behalf that can interface with those machines and do it a lot faster. Do it while we're sleeping, do it while we're doing the other stuff that humans should be doing. We should not be waiting online, navigating through the interface and the menu structure of some machine. I want to be able to talk to a human. I want to be able to use natural language to query systems. And if I can't do that, then I want to have a machine where I can talk to it and it will go and talk machine to machine. So when we think about AI that's going to be truly uplifting for humanity, it's AI that's in service of individuals, not AI that's in service of corporations. There are many, many, many startups and companies working in that. There's so few working on AI that's going to be in service of individuals. Okay.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And you said earlier in this podcast that AI is one of the greatest things or the most powerful things that's happened in the last 100 years. Instinctively, I thought, more than the internet, like you kind of skipped over that. But
No. I mean, the internet was a means to an end. I think AI builds on top of the internet.
right.
But here's what happened when, first of all, when humans developed language, it allowed us to pass down wisdom from one generation to the next. But you could only, when you were doing it with language, you had to do it in real time, and maybe the stories would be remembered, and then you'd have a story tradition where it's passed down. The invention of writing allowed that wisdom to be passed down more efficiently. So now you've got, and that was, the invention of writing was a long time ago, and then printing kind of was an acceleration of that writing. Now the writing didn't have to be manually inscribed. Now you could mass produce it. I think the internet was maybe another kind of acceleration of getting that message, that wisdom communicated a lot faster. What we've got with large language models is something different. And so there are varying opinions from it. If you listen to Noam Chomsky, he says, "Oh, large language models are they're just autocomplete on steroids." Okay, so he's dismissing that completely. On the other extreme, you've got great thinkers like Yuval Harari, the guy who wrote Homo Deus and Homo and Sapiens and so on. He thinks, no, AI has hacked the very operating system of humanity. Wow, okay, that's scary. He says that the way in which we communicate is through our language, and very few other organisms, few species can communicate in the way we do. And in fact, I think he says we've developed telepathy. Well, if because we didn't have telepathy, because I've got a thought in my head that I'm trying to get into your head, the way I do that is through language. And our language is pretty sophisticated. We can communicate very complex thoughts from one person to another. If you look at other animals, they can't do that. They can communicate very simple thoughts. And I think it's that fact that we can communicate complex thoughts and with greater complexity is fantastic. Now, what large language models do is they allow us to kind of vacuum up all of the wisdom. And I was being a bit disparaging, saying, Twitter and Reddit and so on don't have wisdom in there. They've got lots of text that might be linguistically correct, but it might not be factually correct. So we've got to be super careful. It's a powerful tool, but we've got to make sure that it's not garbage going in, because you will get garbage coming out. And so it's a powerful tool. I'd prefer to load it up with factual information rather than stuff that's just linguistically correct. And so you'll end up with AI that is less prone to hallucination and can be more accurate and can answer our questions more clearly rather than going off on a hallucination. Anyway.
Well, The thing that I've noticed being a user, like many people are out there, is now my default is to go to AI,
Yeah,
and instead of just searching and getting data that then I need to put together a solution based on the results. Now I'm searching, getting the data, and getting different ideas, kind of like what you were just talking about there.
yeah,
You're trading ideas, and that generates new ideas that maybe I wasn't even going down that path, which then starts to open up the whole world. And so, but to kind of your point, I'm still querying on things that are out there in the internet, and they're not specific enough,
right.
where what you're talking about doing is creating AI, making it available for the individual so that it can serve me and some of the things that I'm doing,
Yeah,
and I can do the same actions, but I can do them with more intimate, more focused on my data, my client's data, whatever it is that you're
exactly.
putting in.
Your data or your client's data, exactly, and it's more focused. What we've done is we've taken the language model and we've said we don't want the general knowledge part. We
Right.
want the linguistic part of the language model, the the part of the model that allows it to speak English or any other language. And so now you end up with a small language model because it's not got this big bloatware of all of the common crawl of the internet, all of Twitter, all of Reddit. You've just got a small language model, and that can run locally on anyone's laptop or any computer. It doesn't have to run in the cloud. Now it understands how to speak language. And you said I don't want the general knowledge. So you bring the knowledge along, and this system is called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. It's where you take a small language model, but you bring your knowledge along, and you make it queryable using natural language. So that's what we've built: a retrieval augmented generation framework, a RAG framework that allows you to bring your all your email communications, all your communication channels, your calendar, your financial transactions, your healthcare records, everything in there is put in a form. It's called a vector database. It's a form in which you can query it using natural language. And so you ask it a question, and it comes back with maybe a dozen references from your text, and then the language model constructs the answer out of those fragments. But those fragments that came back, those matches from your knowledge base, were your knowledge. They were not general knowledge sucked up from the internet. So we think that could be that's a more useful configuration for personal AI.
So I hear this from time to time, and I gotta believe. I'd love to hear your answer. Are we at the very tip of what AI has available? That is, as you think
Yeah.
about the future, are we just at a small portion of the power of this?
Yeah, I think we're in the foothills. I think, and we don't know how high the peak is. So we probably can't even see the peak. It's up there in the mists. Here's the sort of areas where AI needs to be better. It's pretty good on text. It's not so good on diagrams and equations and so on. It's getting better. That's coming, but it's really good on text. So we want to help. So part of what we're doing at Kwaai, and our organization is growing now. It's nearly 700 members. 80% of those are technical or developers. The rest are split between research and policy. On the research side, we are researching how to make AI more efficient so it can run on your local computer and require less compute from you. So to make it more efficient, in fact, we want to make AI that is smarter, faster, and greener. AI in its current configuration has a disastrous carbon footprint. Even Sam Altman said, "Hey, ChatGPT 4, yeah, takes about 3 bottles of water for every 100 tokens that it generates." Boom. Okay, that is unsustainable.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard last month they were talking about they were so proud that they've landed these nuclear reactor deals that in order to provide sufficient electricity to a data center to serve the AI needs of a metropolitan community, they're going to now put nuclear reactors to power these data centers. That's just completely, it's not brain dead. It's a natural progression of their logic that this is the right thing to do. This is actually the wrong thing to do. We want AI to run at the edge, run in a digital public infrastructure, and we're building that. We got research teams working on the protocols of AI running more like the way that the electrical grid runs. When the electrical grid started, it had central power generation. Now the power generation has moved a lot more to the edge. People put solar panels on their roofs and they actually contribute to the, the grid and they get reimbursed for it. So imagine a fabric, a digital public infrastructure that connects residential computing with enterprise computing, with data centers, but in a fabric where when my machine's not being used, hey, I'm going to make it available to be rented out and I get reimbursed for that. And that takes some of the load. And that's really powerful for America. When the West Coast is peaking in demand, there are machines in the East Coast that people have gone to bed already. Those could be earning money. And so you can imagine a digital public infrastructure where the load is spread more evenly, smarter, faster, and greener.
Well, that's even farther and farther than what I was thinking, but
Yeah.
that's why
So
that's why
we've got
you are
some
where you are. So that makes a lot of sense.
we've got some really smart people working on this, and I'm just grateful to have these volunteers giving up their time, massive brain power, and they're in these work groups and they're coming up with these fantastic ideas.
So give us a little bit, kind of what is the next step for Kwaai, and what do you see the next 5 to 10 years for the platform? And are you raising money through donations? How can people support the platform?
Fantastic. Okay, so all these are really good questions. First time for me running a nonprofit, but when I started, I thought I don't want to be a pathetic charity that's continuously going cap in hand asking for donations. So we have a guiding principle of becoming self-sufficient. We think that if we're going to be a credible alternate to the monopolizing forces, we need to be generating our own revenue and be self-sufficient and kind of inoculated from undue corporate influence. Okay, so that's a broad guiding principle. We just elected a new board, some fantastic individuals, some people from industry, some, it's shaking out my Rolodex of smart and powerful people that I've met. And we've got a board of 6 individuals that I'm hoping are going to help take the movement and the message forward. How can people contribute? Well, you can sign up. It's free to sign up at Kwaai, kwaai.ai, Kaai.ai. Sign up for free. Figure out how you can participate. You can donate. There's a donate button on Kwaai. If you're a corporation, you might want to consider becoming a corporate member. We've not opened up corporate membership yet, but we will be doing that. Going to be super careful about that because we want to allow industry to participate, but not exert undue influence on the organization. And then we hold a number of events. So we have an annual summit. We will have one in March, and you can come and you can sponsor that event and participate at any of the levels. That's a very traditional sponsorship. And we've also opened up an EMEA chapter, so that's Europe, Middle East, and Africa. It's headquartered in Italy, but it covers that kind of time zone of Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And then we got inbound requests for setting up an Asia Pacific chapter. So we'll probably do that next year. So we'll end up with a global organization. The least you could do is spread the word. Like our posts on LinkedIn. That's trivial. Okay, join up as a member. That's free. That's a low barrier to entry, and see how you can contribute. And then all the other ways I've mentioned.
Yeah, no, that's great. I really appreciate that, and for you to take your time. And last question is what do you see? And maybe we already covered it because what you're building is the next 10 years. But what do you see happening in the next 10 years with AI? And are we gonna? I guess a better question I should ask is: are we going to accomplish everything that we're just talked about in this conversation in the next decade, or do you see it farther than that?
I'm optimistic. I've always been optimistic in what I'm doing. So I'm not one that's going to throw my hands up in defeat and say, "Hey, this is a problem." I'm doing something about it, and the people that we've gathered together are doing something about it. So the thing that is encouraging is the success that Linux had. Linux took on a particular area of the industry and completely transformed it and made it healthier, made it better. So I think that's what's going to happen in the next decade. Here's what's going to happen is AI is going to come down from the clouds and is going to be running at the edge. But within a decade, it's going to be running on digital public infrastructure at the edge. And I think that's not difficult to do. In fact, we're starting to do that now. The other big thing that's going to happen is the advertising industry is going to largely disappear. That's $1 trillion of human activity we're going to realize was a complete waste of time. So this is a bold claim. So what's going to replace it? What's going to replace all of that those ad budgets that are bombarding you with commercials to say, "Hey, Adam, we've got these things that you might want to buy." And how are they targeting? How are they targeting you to go and buy this thing? Because what they've been doing is they've been eavesdropping and spying on you and gathering up information to create predictive models. And they're going to realize that's a complete waste of time. Why don't we just ask Adam, Adam, what's on your shopping list this week? And of course, you're a machine, you're a human and they're a machine. But when you have your machine and you've entitled a dozen, 100 or so brands to query your shopping list, then they don't need to advertise you. They can ask you. And you see this in very mature industries. You see the activity becoming a demand side activity rather than a supply side activity. Mature businesses like the taxi business. Okay. Uber doesn't advertise to me, "Hey, we've got drivers going to the airport." No, I pick up my phone and I say, "I need to get to LAX in the next 2 hours." Okay. And so that's a sign of a demand side action. Airbnb, demand side action. Lots of industries are moving towards demand side action. And so the advertising component of those businesses just goes. So I think what happens when we all have our own personal agent working on our behalf, we'll be able to interact with those businesses, and the need for advertising, at least the direct to consumer advertising, that need will completely disappear. The smart way would be for businesses to actually ask you, "What is it you want?" Okay, and then bid to say, "Okay, I see Adam is in the market for a wine cooler because he's suggested that." Oh, okay. Here are the half a dozen corporations that are going to bid on serving that need for Adam, and then your agent will probably filter those and say, "Okay, recommend here the top three. Which one do you choose?" Okay, great. We'll go with that. Good. I'll handle the rest of it for you. So that whole B2C relationship, business to consumer relationship, completely gets inverted. And it's me to be. It puts you in the driver's seat and the businesses are secondary. So that is the other big prediction for what will happen in the next 10 years. Okay.
Well, that's definitely a big one, and you crushed a lot of potential small businesses but you're right. I mean, it's just going to get faster. It's going to get easier. And when I talk about AI in the limited capacity that I know about, I just say it's another tool that we can do what we need to do better, faster.
I'm going to suggest you read this book. It's called The Intention Economy. It's written by Doc Searls. So this was written a decade ago, and it kind of predicts that inversion of the relationship between business and consumers. Doc Searls is an officer at Kwaai. So that's That's a free plug for his book. And but he predicts that this is going to happen, this inversion. It wasn't technically possible when he wrote the book. With AI now, with personal AI, it does become possible.
Well, that's amazing. Reza, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate your time and your wisdom, and I look forward to seeing what Kwaai is going to do in the future. I'll definitely sign up. And again, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Adam, thank you so much and keep well.
Thank you.